Good evening, everyone. My name is Dexter B. Jenkins, and welcome to Let's Talk Real Estate. I am your host, and as you guys know, we get together on the third Tuesday of every month to talk about all things real estate. And the great thing about real estate is that we talk about the fact that it is a wealth creation tool. And so we have a few people here in the studio audience today. You guys clap, yeah. So they know I'm not lying. And then we have a number of people watching right now, and then we'll have some other folks who will watch as this is recorded and played over the week, and then social media and all that. So if you were following us, what we've been talking about, we started this group in, I think, March, April, spring of last year. And I said the goal really was for us to just get together and begin to talk about real estate, because I have a passion for wealth building, I have a passion for financial literacy, and what I believe is that wealth building, real estate is the lowest hanging fruit on the wealth building tree. That if you don't even really have to know what you're doing in some cases, and build wealth through real estate. So what if we really can learn some things? How good could we be? And so that's the how we genesis of this group. And we're calling it Let's Talk Real Estate, but ideally we want you to start doing deals. But what I do know is that since my wife and I, who's in the audience today, started in 2016, is that we got comfortable because we were in different formats and people were talking about it. The next thing you know, we were able to go forward and get some things going. So we had said earlier, if you guys followed us through our social media and things that nature, LinkedIn, we talked about the fact that we were going to have Starlene Alves was supposed to be here today, but she had a family emergency this month, so she couldn't be here. So we'll have to pray for her and reach back out to her later on. But I was able to get a worthy substitute. His name is Luke Hanscom, and Luke and I met last month at another real estate meetup, and she treated me to breakfast and things of that nature. So we are developing a relationship. And so what I asked Luke to talk about, just like we'll talk about with some other things as well, is really talk about the importance of entity formation. So talking about like LLCs and S Corps and C Corps and all that. And if that's all that means nothing to you, that's okay. By the end of the night, it will. And if you stick around long enough, you'll get all that. So welcome to the Let's Talk Real Estate stage, Luke Hanscom. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Dexter. Pleasure to be here, and I'm sure big shoes to fill, but hopefully I can shed some light on the lender perspective of why you might use an entity or an LLC, and some of the reasons why we find it to be important, some different ideas and strategies that your folks can use. So happy to answer any questions. And
Well, we'll start with who you are and what company you're from and all that, and so give people a background, and then we'll get into what.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Luke Hanscom, and I've been the regional director or fund manager for the New England Fund for Fund That Flip since about midway through 2020. We do short-term real estate loans for fix and flip and new construction, anywhere from 3 months to 18 months for your term length, and are working with experienced investors, getting them in and out of projects, providing that capital at scale, and moving guys in and out of projects so everybody can make money while we're doing it. Right.
Yeah. So Luke is what I affectionately call a money man. So as we've talked in this class, we talked about three things. We talked about how to find deals, how to fund deals, and then how to monetize them. So that means obviously finding them is really, if you can find a deal, everything else falls in place. First of all, you got to find it. Then you call somebody like Luke. He's a guy who says, hey, I got a project, I need some money. Unless you have your own capital, but one of the things you want to learn is, sometimes you don't want to use your own money, or sometimes you got money tied up in other places and you can't get, so you call a guy like Luke to be able to say, hey, I got a great deal. Can you fund it? And then obviously the aim is always to monetize it, because you always want to have multiple exit strategies, because markets change. As you guys know, the market has changed dramatically over the last, 3 months, 6 months. And what you could get away with 6 months ago, you can't get away with now. And so you got to have multiple exit strategies. So Luke will fall under that second F of funding. And so, if you need some deals going down the line, he's someone that you would lean on in order to do that. So that's why we're building it. And I always say you want to have a relationship with multiple lenders, because all of them have different criteria and things they're looking to fund. Luke funds guys who are a little bit more experienced, but then remember, I think our session, Julio, They fund guys who are just starting our first flip, so it just depends on what the lender is looking for. And so Luke is on the other side of that. So Luke, tell like I said, we're talking entity formation. So talk about what you're seeing, talk about from a lender perspective, what you're seeing, some of your clients, how they use entities or LLCs and S corps. So talk to us about that.
Sure, yeah. So when it comes to the entity use, I've been lucky enough to hear people way smarter than me explain why you should use them and the different ones that make the most sense. And what we see the most of, it's got to be in the high 90s% of the deals that we close are into LLCs.
Okay.
And what most people will do is they'll spin up a new LLC for every property that they're going to transact on.
Right.
We love it when they do that because it provides some additional protection across different liabilities from other properties, separating your personal assets to your business assets, a whole bunch of different things you can lean into for that. But general answer on that is LLC is the most common.
Okay.
And we'll see some others with a little bit more complicated structures from time to time, but I would say just about everybody is doing a single-use LLC for all of the real estate.
Right. So for those of you who don't know what an LLC, does everybody here know what an LLC, at least heard of what an LLC is? Okay, an LLC, thank you, dear. An LLC is a limited liability company. I'm tempted to say corporation, but it's not. It's company. It's what it is. And so what Luke was saying is that you want to separate your personal business from your real estate business, and because that's what we have to do. This is a business. We're not here because we want to play around. We want to make money and have a business. And so thinking like a business person, you want to have separate entities to do that. And so one of the ways to do that is through a limited liability company.
Yeah, and one of the things that a lender is going to look at, and it's certainly in our space as a hard money lender, we can't lend to an owner-occupied property.
Okay.
So one of the ways to kind of identify that, hey, this is a business use, I'm getting a business loan, for this transaction, is to put it into an entity such as an LLC. They're typically $500-600 to spin something up. So
depends on where you go, but
minimal cost to for relativity compared to what you're going to spend in a real estate transaction. So worth doing it. And the other thing that's really important too that we like when we talk about that single use LLC is that, let's say you're a savvy investor and you have properties all over the place, and you might have Dexter B. Jenkins LLC that owns 15 rental properties.
Right.
And I slip and fall and break my back while I'm putting a roof on property 123 Main Street, and I decide to sue you.
Right.
I'm not just coming after 123 Main Street, I'm coming after
all
everything
15
else.
of the properties. Exactly.
So if you do it in that single use, you limit that kind of cross liability between the other properties that you own, and say, hey, this is its own business. 123 Main Street is 123 Main Street. I got these partners, I got this structure here. If something happens there, that's all that's exposed.
Right.
So the lenders really like that too. So we know that maybe you have a loan on a different address in that LLC, and now all of a sudden a property that we're lending on is exposed to that liability. So we prefer it when the LLC is only have the asset that we're lending on in there.
And I think what Luke is talking about is critical for you to understand is that, and you guys know this, we're in a very litigious society, where you think that people are sue happy and sue crazy. And so when you have a particular business, you own a piece of property. So whether it's your own personal or a investment property, if somebody does fall, potentially someone is trying to sue you and take all your assets. And so one of the ways that you protect that is through this thing called an LLC. And I like what you're saying. You said single use, because I've never heard a term in that way. A single use LLC, meaning that you're only using this LLC for 123 Main Street or 567 Main Street, and it's not being used for anything else.
Yeah, that can be important because you could even find some trailing liability things if you're using the same LLC for all of your transactions.
Okay.
Something may come up from a property that you've owned for 20 years that you didn't know about, and now all of a sudden that's going to expose a new property that you're transacting on. So you've got a whole bunch of ways to protect yourself for the cost of $500 or $600. It's really a no-brainer in that part. And the other thing that you talk about in the wealth management side of things and the financial growth is a lot of the guys that we work with are using different partners on every project. So you might be getting money from a relative or a friend or business partner or somebody else that's involved that's in on 123 Main Street, but you've got different people on 456 Main Street. So when you create that LLC, it lets you set them up individually as an individual business.
Right.
So your partners and the structure on your operating agreement, which is the piece that identifies who's in that LLC, can be different on each one. So you might say, hey, I've got, my partner Jim on 123 Main Street, he's going to be a 20% member and he's going to get 10% of the equity or the upside of this project. You might want a different setup for 456 Main Street. So it allows you to kind of organize those structures as a business instead of having this kind of wonky, who's in what, and it gives clarity for sure.
So talk about, because thank you, you took me where I want to go, is what are the components within an LLC? So talk about that.
Yeah, so the two most common structures that we see are either a single member LLC, which is exactly what it sounds like. Dexter B. Jenkins is buying the house and it's under his name and that's it, and you're the owner, 100% member, everything is on you. The other piece that we'll see is, you see a membership group, which is identified by an operating agreement. So you have different class levels of members, different percentage ownerships of members, and that can identify who those partners may be, what those structures look like, who owns how much percent, who's responsible for what, and that allows you to get a little bit more creative too, with some different potential tax structuring and things that I'm not smart enough to talk about. So I'll open the door, but I'm not going to walk through it. So there's some stuff there that you could dive deeper into. And the other piece that goes back to that kind of wealth management side of things is what we frequently see is people set up what's called the distribution of proceeds. Okay. So you can set your operating agreement up to suggest, okay, partner A is going to have 60% of the revenue from this project. So once we sell the house and we're making $200,000, partner A is going to take 120 grand. Okay. And partner B is entitled to 40,000, and partner C is getting paid 25% on his money that he invested. You can identify all the different steps in there, so have it clean, laid out in front of everybody, so nobody's questioning what's going on. And when you're talking about big money,
and you need to have that.
Yeah. It just makes things run smoother.
Yeah, you definitely need to have that, because I think what Luke is talking to us about, when you start talking about operating agreement, that really talks about exactly how things should be paid out, who does what, whatever else. And so when you're setting up your LLC, so whether, we've have 2 or 3 of them, and we've gone to, we have a lawyer. Vanessa, can you close that door? Because I'm hearing the other stuff and I'm distracted. But anyway, back to regular program. But it's important that you have an operating agreement and you spell things out, because as you begin to make money, people catch amnesia. We don't know how this is going to happen and all that. And so, and particularly when you talk about partnerships and joint venture things and all that, it's extremely important that you have things in writing, and so your LLC can spell a lot of that out for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a clean way of doing it. Keeps everybody on the same page, and you'll start to see, as you get more involved and other folks that you might work with get more involved, you might even see a member on an operating agreement be another LLC.
True.
Which is
I've seen.
Definitely a possibility. So maybe you're working with the same partners on an equity side of your deal structures, and the 3 people that are in that group formed an LLC and said, oh yeah, Dexter, we're going to invest into your deals. This is the returns that we expect. So they're going to put their LLC as the member in that operating agreement. So some of that stuff can start to get tricky, because the one thing that a lender is always going to want to do is know who's on your operating agreement. So a part that's smart to keep in mind is kind of a rule of thumb, and this isn't particular just to us, and it's kind of across the board on many lenders in our space, and some of them are different, but most people will say any member that's above a 10% stake in the operating agreement, we want to know who that person is. Okay. We're going to want them to sign on the loan. We're going to do the deep dive. I said the deep dive, but we're going to do that information find on who that is, so we know where our money's going. So we don't want to be lending money to an LLC that has 35 members on it, and 2 of those members are on a do not lend list, or they're international criminals, or have been money launderers or something. We have to know where our money's going. Exactly. Because you don't want to be running around saying, oh yeah, we're lending money to everybody in town, and then you say, oh yeah, they're lending money to these guys or these criminals or people who are doing bad things. So you want to protect ourselves from that. Gets more complicated as more people get added to it, but something to keep in mind is that if you do start adding to that operating agreement, anybody that's over 10% is likely going to be asked to sign or at least have background check run on them and kind of the whole check on who they are, so the lender is comfortable with the people on there.
Right. Question: What other entities are you seeing? So we talked a little bit about LLCs. What other entities are you guys seeing people use?
Yeah, I've seen people use different corporations. So I've seen the S corp, I've seen the C corp. Everybody that I've spoken to that have used those, and especially folks that have done this for a long time. I listened to a guy at a meetup in New Hampshire last week who's been doing this for 40 years. He said, "Man, if I could have done one thing differently, I would have done them all in LLCs instead of doing the C corp." So we very rarely accept anything besides an LLC for our transactions. I would say the most common second option or the most frequent ask that we get outside of an LLC is a trust.
Tingling, talk about that.
Yeah, so
now because I'm learning about I'm learning y'all too. We all in class because I hear a lot about trust and once you start getting into, you'll hear so many different variations of what can be done and who should do what, and obviously you have to do what's best for your own business. But I am hearing a lot about trust. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So again, I'll say this with the caveat I'm not a lawyer.
This is his disclaimer.
So happy to help and answer whatever questions I can, but I don't want anybody to run.
Don't go do something based off what we're talking about.
From what I understand of it, and for us as a lending shop, we'll look at every situation as it comes. So circumstantially, so if someone says, "Hey, this is how my entity is structured. This is what I'd like to do." My first question is why? Right. Why do you need to be in a trust? Can you explain to me what you're trying to solve? Most of the time, it's privacy. So when you have the trust set up, you can have your trustee be the person whose name is on the public record, but then everybody else that's a part of that trust is private. You can't see their information. So for me, that's a problem, because if I don't know who's in the trust and I'm lending 123 Trust $2 million, and all of a sudden, one of the members of that trust is, Bin Laden's cousin or something, that doesn't look good for us. So we have to be aware of why they want to do it and understand, what the ask is. And if we can make a business case to say, yes, we can do it that way, we'll go through, at length to do so. But that's the strategy that I see a lot of people trying to do for privacy purposes, is go into the trust and have their cousin be the named member who nobody knows, so that, they don't have their high school class reunion Googling them and saying, "Oh, wow, Dexter's making all this money now. I want to see what's up." Like, guys are trying to avoid that. Trust is a way to do it.
Yeah, and I think that when I do hear trust, it's mostly about privacy. And I think when you start talking, actually my wife today said, she got a text this morning? You got a text someone, because I probably on New Bedford, texted her and says, "Do you own 439, da-da-da-da?" So people can track you down once you start accumulating things, because all this stuff's public records, right? And so sometimes what people don't want to know is want people to know how much they have or what they have, and so they try to hide it. And so one of the ways that I have heard about that is through trust. Yeah,
it's one of those things that I think if there was an easy solution to solve the privacy part, like, we'd already all be doing that.
Right.
But there's got to be, a line in the sand of understanding who's involved in a project. There's a lot of accountability reasons that I think are important, not just in the lending space, but across the whole show. It's important to know who's owning real estate. If you look across, kind of the country now and see how much real estate's bought up by institutions compared to individuals, and different ways to identify that stuff. And if you know who's buying it, then that's how you can start to approach those challenges.
Right. Any questions in the audience? You guys got anything? No. We can come back to you.
From a trust perspective, I've only really seen it with families putting things in a trust, and there's certain stipulations around that. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. So the question was, from a trust perspective, seeing it most frequently in family situations. Where else is the question? Like, kind of where else would people want to use it, or
I'm supposed to be on mic, sorry. And basically, just, do you know how? I know you're not a lawyer, but do you know how it's mostly, I've seen people who have inherited things through a trust, or they now take over the trust for the family. It's sort of from a generational wealth building. Do you know anything about that, or?
Yeah, definitely not my area of expertise, so I wouldn't want to guess and steer anybody in the wrong direction. So when somebody does inherit something from a trust, it can be interesting, because depending on who the other members of that trust are, you have to kind of have everybody's buy-in to do something. So if you inherit a property in a trust, and say you have two siblings, and it's you and your two brothers are inheriting this, and you're looking at, okay, well, one of them wants to keep it and rent it, one of them wants to sell it, and one of them doesn't care. So what do you do? In most cases, my understanding is like the legal side of it will say you got to liquidate it, and then at that point the assets are no longer in the trust. It's the money is distributed between the people who were members of the trust rather, and then you kind of go your separate ways with what's in there. So I've seen that happen. That's always an interesting piece that you have to navigate when something goes through that. But as far as keeping the ownership in a trust, I would say the only time I've really seen somebody try to do that is for like a charitable or like donation component of it, because there are some benefits to do it that way. Again, listen to somebody a lot smarter than me speak about that once, and he had a really good rundown as to how that would work. Then at the end of his presentation, he was trying to get everybody to sell him their real estate so he could put it in a trust and pay him back. So, they're double-edged sword on some of that information. But yeah, I'd say for simplicity's sake, especially for somebody starting out, if you're trying to get into this, the easiest way to do it and have it make sense, protect yourself and give yourself the organization that's necessary on an earlier deal. Do it with the LLC. Even if it's owned in a trust today, find a way to transfer it. Get all of that stuff figured out, because that gives you a chance to level set with everybody too, and say, hey, I have 50%, you have 30, and he has whatever. You can kind of go through the rounds of who's going to be responsible for what, and puts everybody on the same page again, laying it out clearly like you were saying, so there's no questions. Nobody's coming up on the sale day and saying, oh wow, well I'm getting this, and well no you're not, because we already outlined it here, and it just gives you a chance to bring everything kind of back together and put people on the same page. Yeah.
And the other question I had, you mentioned S Corp and C Corp. Can you just tell us the difference between those two things?
So for the real estate side of it, as far as the real estate side of it goes, I think the majority of that is on the tax world, which definitely there's a theme here. Not smart enough to give you any information on that.
I'm not saying not smart enough to do that, but I'm going ahead.
So I definitely would lean on somebody with a little bit more experience in using those, because I've never used one personally, and I haven't closed with anybody who's used them either. So I've just heard stories from other folks of different ways of structuring their business using those. Different strategies that maybe Dexter can share.
And most of the time I've heard it is been for tax reasons, and so they shift it based off of what they're trying to get done in their tax, because all of us may or may not know your taxes is it is your highest expense that you have to sort of shield yourself against, and so based off of S Corp, C Corp, LLCs. The reason why you treat that stuff like a business is because you're writing a check from yourself, from your LLC or your S Corp to yourself personally. So you never want to take it out directly. You want to have a check written to yourself. So your tax attorney, which I got to get somebody who knows taxes up here next to tie all this together, would do that. But that's what I've heard most of the time is whether it's S Corp or C Corp is mostly, for tax benefits. Yeah.
And I think you can still obtain a lot of those benefits, and there may be some additional privacy benefits for those other corporations as well, if I remember right from the last kind of crash course I took in that stuff. But I know on the tax side of it, I believe there are a lot of similar benefits no matter how you structure it.
Gotcha.
And something I heard a guy say that I found really interesting the other day was we work our day job and your W-2 paycheck, and then that money gets taxed before you get it, and you go that route with it, versus if you do your business in an LLC or you set it up as a business operation, like you get to go and earn that money, go spend on your costs, pay your people that work for you, and pay your accountants and everybody else in the on the team there, and then you pay taxes on what's left instead of what you're taking from the beginning, and then you go pay taxes on everything that you buy with that money too. So that structure has always made the glaringly clear sense to me as to why you would want to use an LLC, so you give yourself that ability to write some stuff off.
Right. I mean, because it is, back to what we've been talking about, one of my opening statements, this is a business. and so you want to treat it like that. And so having an entity set up so that you can earn, spend, and then pay tax on the backside, as opposed to what we do in a W-2 is once you earn, it's tax immediately, and Uncle Sam don't care what you do. He taking his off the TOP, So it's just a different way of operating, And so and it is, like I said, it is something that you as you grow in your business and your understanding of things and your own personal goals, you'll decide which one is best for you. But starting now, I think, like Luke said, a LLC for most 99.9% of the people, and I like what you said, the single-use LLC, so every different property, because I think everybody I've talked to, I've said you need to have a separate LLC for every property, because who knows what's going to happen and whatever else, and so you want to keep things separate.
Yeah, like we said before, the cost of spinning one up being a couple $100,
it's
to the benefit
expensive.
that you get from the protections and limiting your liabilities to other things getting involved there. Like, spend the money. You're not doing a real estate deal to make $600, so you're doing it to make $600,000. So what's $600 at the end of that? So,
right. Cost of doing business.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions in the audience? You guys had to say.
Yeah, I have one. Now, with an LLC, say you are protecting yourself. Now, is there, say, if someone does come after you in a lawsuit, is there a cap on how much they can sue you for within an LLC, or is it?
I don't think there is a. There's a cap on it. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't believe there is, right? I think each case is looked at individually, so it depends on what the case is for. So, to say, could they sue me for more than what the LLC is worth? Sure, maybe, but if there's only so much to go after, you can sue somebody for whatever you want. They're going to pay you what they have.
Right.
So
True.
you protect yourself from all those other either personal assets or other business assets by keeping it in that individual LLC, so you're not exposing those other properties or other other parts of your asset class to that type of risk. So that's I think the whole point behind it. And
all of this, exactly. Is keeping everything in one spot. So this is all you got access to.
Yeah, and it creates the corporate veil, if you will, between you and your business.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately what you want to protect against is somebody slipping on ice on your sidewalk and suing you, and all of a sudden you're moving out of your house because they just took you for everything that you own. So you want to keep all that stuff separate. Yeah,
and there are a lot of stories that I've heard of that happening, where people have lost things or had to sell things because of, they didn't have the protection. And so, you want to, after we begin to accumulate these assets, we've got to go into protection mode. It's extremely important that you do that.
Yes, if you look at it from the beginning of the process, so when you're going to purchase the real estate and you spin up a single-use LLC, so you're going to buy 123 Main Street, you're going to have a title exam done or title search done before you close on the property, and then you're going to obtain title insurance.
Right.
So you're covered on anything prior to that. So if all the title stuff's clean, everybody's good there. Title insurance is going to insure the property. You've got the single-use LLC, so you're not worried about anything from 10 years ago on that address coming back and biting you. You're not worried about something on another property that you own coming back and biting you. The only thing that you could be exposed to is the immediate risk on that property itself, which for the most part, you're going to have insurance on. So if you're doing a renovation or doing a new construction, you've got builder's risk. You've got policies in place that are going to protect you. Now, sure, you go through one of those things and a roofer does fall off and sues you or whatever, something happens. Your insurance is going to go up, but you're not going to lose your house.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because that was my next sort of wave of thinking of who we need to have is how does like your entities and your insurance, how do they work together, to cover you, because that's what you want to do. And so between entities and insurance and things of that nature, those are things that you use to protect your asset.
Yeah, and I think it just goes to show how many different moving parts in the whole process there are.
Yes.
It takes a village from closing a single family flip to building 30 condos. I mean, every transaction requires insurance, title,
Yeah.
legal, lenders, partners. You have all
A lot of
these
people
different-
eat during a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
You know, I think I saw a chart one time. It was like it was double digit. The amount of people between agent and lawyers and inspectors and appraisers. I'm just like, wow, you know, because you do it, you just go through the process. But when you really look at how many people actually have to get involved in a transaction, man, it's a lot of people, and you have to have a team in order to walk through some of those things. I mean, actually, Sister Angela, the Perkins, she's texted me a few times. Well, who do you use it for this? Who do you use it for that one? What about? And I'm like, yeah, use this person, call this person, because, you know, there's so many different pieces to a real estate transaction. And part of the reason why we want to start this group is because I wanted to have a group that people can come to and say, hey, you know, who are you using? You know, because the best way, in my opinion, to do business is through referrals. You know, someone I've used, hey, matter of fact, I texted somebody today for a floor guy. I'm like, I need a floor guy. I texted a guy today. You know, he said, hey, use this guy. You know, I ended up having a phone call with, you know, and so what I want to do is have this sort of thing where people can, hey, you know, as we grow and do bigger things, you know, we'll have a recommended list of people who will use and all of that. But, you know, it's just very important that you have all these pieces, and insurance is an extremely important part of this whole thing.
Absolutely. So you've done a handful of transactions now. Do you do anything differently today when you close on something than you did on your first couple of transactions?
No, I think we do about the same thing. As far huh?
I think we're better at it.
Yeah, I'm not shaking sign the paperwork. Your first one, you know, you sort of like, you know, shaking. Is this gonna be okay? You know,
What did I just do?
Yeah, what did I just do? And then my wife's with me, so I'm playing it cool in front of her, but on the inside, I'm like, oh my God, is this gonna work? You know.
Well, it sounds like you probably had a pretty good team involved.
We did, yeah. What we did was we went through a mentorship program, and so the program cost X amount of dollars, and so they were very good with walking us through what to expect, and so that helped us because I don't know. I would say the biggest thing that most people don't do is they don't get started. And so it was that environment that allowed me to feel comfortable that, hey, if I had a question of I need liability insurance, who do I call? You know, it was just a phone call or text away. And so, you know, what we've tried to do in the process of doing is do that same thing for you guys, is that, hey, if you got a question, whether it's there, whether you guys here, you know, you can send us a text message or you can send us an email. I mean, all you guys have done that. Hey, PD, well, I got a question. And, you know, I don't mind doing it because somebody did that for us. And I know that the more people that you can get in your corner, it will allow you to get moving. Because once you get moving, because you said this earlier, he said this offline, the only way you can read and go to many seminars, at some point, you got to do something. You got to buy a prop. That's the only way you learn, is like Vanessa's like, I got 110 today and 110 moving out. You can't learn that lesson sitting on the side. You know, oh, but we got to call. The toilet broke. Okay, well, you got to learn that. Okay, how do I fix that? Or, you know, the snow is piled up. How do I fix those? And obviously, you get teams in place to do that. But, you know, you got to get started. And so a team behind you and a team with you helps you to feel comfortable moving out and doing it.
Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting things that I kind of initially learned in the real estate world when I first got involved here was like, it was a little strange to me, a little foreign to me, that so many people were so cohesive and willing to help. And you go to these events, and, you know, coming from a more of a corporate sales background, like I would never go to an event there and expect to learn from other people across the process of what I was doing that wanted to help me. Like, why would they help me?
Exactly.
It didn't make any sense. Why does this guy who's so successful want to teach me how to do it? And like the giving back aspect of that, and kind of building that network of people has always been a remarkable thing to see. One, just because of the authenticity of so many people that are willing to help. But like, what's in it for you in like the give back process of setting up something like this and attending other events where you're happily saying, hey, I'll help you. You know, what do you need?
Luke is taking on my show, and he interviewing me, which I like. I think we've always been people who like to help, and I've always I just like talking real estate and wealth building. Always have been, you know, as a child and as, you know, as a son of an entrepreneur and things of that nature. And then as I look at and I see people with potential, and I see they're frozen and stuck. Some of y'all are frozen and stuck up there in TVville too. So what my wife and I let's put something together to help people move forward, and so that's what we've done. And so we may have a training program down the line we charge for, but at this point it's not even on our thought process. It's really how can we get people the information they need so they can move forward.
Yeah.
And so that's part of that. And so, when you and I met a couple weeks ago now, I said, okay, you're a guy who seems to be on the same page of wanting to see people do well and help folks and all that. And so, introduce you to my tribe because of that reason, because we want people who have a desire to see people win. Yeah. Now, because when they win, you win.
Right. And we don't win. I think for the most part, everybody in our industry doesn't win without skill, without being able to do it consistently. You can show up and flip one house.
Right.
Great. What have you done
that's
for me lately?
Like, that's a start.
You're going to make a couple bucks and move on, or you might get 2 rental doors and that'll cash flow a little bit, but you're not going to retire with that. So
no.
How do you build it? How do you scale it? So we win when guys can repeat the process.
Exactly.
So you go through and you find the success. You're ironing out some of the kinks, and you're getting you streamlined in that, and you start scaling the business, and that's where everybody I think gets the best value out of being
exactly. And I think that's where we're headed. You start. Like I was telling Lynn Perkins, I said, this is your training house. You learn things on your first deal, your second deal, your third deal, and then as you begin to talk about, okay, if I want to do this, because first of all, everybody's business is different. Some people don't want to own 20 doors. I believe if you own 5 or 6, you can retire off that if you know what you're doing between cash flow and appreciation and all that type of stuff. If once you become skilled in that manner, you can do that. But if you want to build a bigger business, to your point, is scaling, is money guys like yourself, is building a team, because you don't want to have another job. You want freedom. That's why you're doing this, so that I don't want people calling me at 12 o'clock. My toilet broke. I'm not going to no New Bedford or Attleboro or whatever else. Somebody else going to do that, But you have to learn first. Then you begin to build your team out, and then that's when you begin to have freedom. I like what Warren Buffett said. He says, unless you find a way to make money without you working, you'll work until you die. And I don't think nobody wants to sign up for that program. Even if you like what you do, there are times where, like I was telling them, that my wife and I just came back from Bermuda. I said, man, we could have stayed another week or 2. Well, okay, if you have enough money and cash flow coming in, things of that nature, you got a team in place. You can run this from anywhere. And that's the goal, and that's the dream, to be able to have enough passive income coming in, so that wherever you live at, the dollars are coming in. I call it mailbox money, even though we don't mail stuff anymore. But it's sort of the concept of, when you go to your account and ding, 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 you see whatever money there. That's why we're doing all of this, is having these seminars and workshops and having guys like you come in and talk to us about entities and all of that, because you want to set people up to think like that.
Yeah, and one of these days I'll come and talk to everybody about something I know something about, not this.
Well, look, I appreciate you, bro, because I was because we were stuck. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Obviously, we could have talked a little bit about it, but I appreciate your perspective as a lender, because I hadn't even thought about it because she was going to look at it from a lawyer perspective, but then also looking at it from a lender perspective. Why would you guys want someone to have entities and LLCs? Is definitely much appreciated.
And if your lender and your lawyer are doing it right, those two should be the ones figuring all that stuff out.
Exactly.
You shouldn't even be involved in those conversations. It should be, hey,
what are you trying to do?
What's on your, give me your entity documents. Can I see your operating agreement? Yeah. Dexter, who you're partnered with on this one? Okay, cool. Like, your involvement in that part of it should be so minimal if you're working with a team that knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Especially a team that works with each other frequently.
Right.
So that we've found a ton of success in working with a handful of different title folks and closing attorneys across the Northeast, but for the most part, we're repeat business with so many of the people that we work with. So after you go through the process once, it's simple.
Right.
So that part all comes full circle real quickly. But, I had another question for you too, to kind of tie back.
But it goes back to what we were talking about. You'll build a team eventually, and we're still building our team out. And I always tell people, look, I believe in the Noah's Ark theory. You need 2 of everything. 2 carpenters, 2 plumbers, 2 lawyers, 2 lenders. I'm just saying it could be 2 or more. But you're always on on the hunt, so to speak. You're always looking to network. You're always looking, because I mean, our contractor that we had been using on all our projects up until now, he just upped up and moved to North Carolina. Now I'm happy for him, but I'm like, dang, where's my contract? So now so the project is one that we're doing in West Bridgewater now is a little slow getting off because we've had to go look for a contractor. You know, see, one of the things you want to do as a business, you're always looking to, I'm always, who you using for this, who you using for that, who you using for that. Now, even if I don't use them, this is a little hack I use too. Even when I'm driving and I see a van that says something, I take the picture of the van. Be like, click, 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 click. He does, now I may never call it, but who knows? You know, I'm driving around seeing people, I'm taking pictures, you know. So my point being is you always want to be looking and talking to people because you just never know. Life happens, people retire, things just happen, and you can't be stuck to one person because when you got money out, stuff still needs to get done, but you can't find a plumber, you can't find a carpenter, you can't find a lender, you know, and those things need to take place. So.
I have a question. You talked about when they're looking at the information for flipping, and you're looking to get, was it hard money or flip?
Hard money, yeah, you're talking about hard money.
When you have your LLC, what are they looking for specifically? What do you need to have ready in order to be able to get additional funds?
Yeah, so the purpose of the LLC is just to identify basically the purchaser of the real estate. So that LLC is what is actually going to transact on the property. So the main purpose is saying, okay, these are the people that own the LLC that we're lending to. The LLC will typically have what's called an EIN and an operating agreement, which is basically your definition of your registration to the state and the people in the LLC.
Right.
So the details along the actual LLC itself are actually very simple. Most of it's like boilerplate legal jargon. Like you could Google it and they're all the same. And don't quote me on that, but
pretty much it's pretty much the same.
It's really just a standard set of documents that show who's buying the real estate and what what that business is. I think you had a question too.
Yeah, my question is, what does DRE stand for? What exactly is that DRE is about? What is his focus on?
This right here? That's the name of our company. But what we do is we buy, what we talk about, buying, selling, developing real estate. It's just a name.
So is it an internship to help you guys, to help somebody like me, for example, to go into flipping?
How much money you got? Yeah.
I know how to do all those things.
Okay. Yeah. Well, part of what we do is this is part of the mentorship, and then obviously if people want to do more, because actually we are sort of mentoring. We're actually mentoring a couple of people now. It's not a paid mentorship, but what we've been doing is because we like people. We've been showing if you have to be serious. I ain't got time to be playing around for. But if you're serious, I've gone. If people have sent me deals, I've looked at them. Hey, PD, what do you think about this? So I talk to people. My wife talks to people. We've gone to floor and decor with people. We've done all those things because we're committed to helping people grow in this particular area. So if you want to do something, just leave your information and we'll follow up. Yeah.
And then I think we haven't really talked about what it takes to create an LLC. I think that was part of maybe Vanessa's question. So we've done it, but if you, honey, could just go through and say what our experience is like creating one, I think that would be helpful.
Well, there are a couple ways you can do it. You can go and Google it, and you can go through the state yourself and do it, or you can go to a real estate attorney. Because there are lawyers who they sort of dabble in that, and I don't like to dabble with. I don't like folk dabblers. I like somebody who this is their main gig. They're experts, so they spend the majority of their practicing real estate. And so Luke said $500-600. I mean, we paid. I think the highest we paid is $1,100. So it just depends. So it can range from 5 to 6. To up to like 1,000, so I think that's the most we paid was like 1,100 is what we paid, and then what we did was they asked how many people are going to be part of it. So what you talked about, what are the percentages of it? So it's going to be 50. So my wife and I are 50-50 partners in everything we've done. I think we're 50-50, right? We 50-50. I set most of them up. She just signs it, so she's like whatever. So she trusts me, so it's 50-50. But that's what they do. And then to Luke's point, your lawyer, whoever sets it up, well, I'll just say lawyer in this case, they'll send you pretty much a boilerplate thing and say, okay, are these the things that you plan on doing within this LLC? You say yes, they send it off. Get these, well, and you can get your own EIN number if you want to. You can call but you can Google IRS.gov and you can get your own for free on your own. But because time is of the essence, I just have them do everything at one time. And so they get the EIN number. So because the EIN number and your articles allow you to go open up your own checking account, business checking account, which you should have because you don't want to have your personal checks, your personal business account with your LLC and things of that nature. So that's called commingling, and that's a whole other tax issue. But you want to make sure that you have those two things separate. So, did I answer that question?
You brought up a good question. What if you don't have a business account yet?
You need to get one, like now, like tomorrow.
Yesterday.
Yeah, call up your bank and say, look, this is what I'm doing.
I was going to get one, but then the tenant decided that she was going to leave after she got
Nah.
there. So I was just like,
No, don't wait. You need to get one like tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you own the property in an LLC now, or?
yes, it is in the house.
Yeah, so you should create an account for that, and that allows you to track and kind of keep your expenses and any
exactly.
of your tax purpose dollars associated with that property all lined up and organized, so you're not, like Dexter said, commingling between your personal credit card and when you have to spend money for the business on the asset that the business owns. You can separate that stuff and identify it for your tax purposes to keep that stuff put together and kept organized.
And then now you're starting to get into, so once you start getting accounts and all that and credit cards, now you start talking about how to develop business credit, which is a whole nother class, which you want to begin to do. And so, you're separating yourself, and you can get much higher credit limits, when you have your business set up correctly and they see that you're operating it like a business, lines of credit and credit cards and all that. And obviously you want to be smart about how you use them. But it's part of identifying yourself as a business person.
Two other things too on the LLC stuff. So if anybody here or watching from home want to practice on what that looks like, you can go, and lawyers will hate me for this because I'm stealing business from them. But you can go to LegalZoom, the website, and you go through the process. You can go all the way to the end before they actually make you pay for it. Right. So go and see all the questions that they're going to ask you.
It's funny you say that. My first LLC was through LegalZoom. Yeah,
So
my first one or two were. Yeah.
You can do it yourself,
Exactly.
and you can go all the way to the last page. Like the last step is put your payment info in. So if you just want to see what the process is, what questions they're going to ask you, all the information that you're going to need, do it that way when you want to do your transaction or go through an attorney, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Right.
But that'll give you a good practice run of what that looks like. And the other piece that I think is important to remember, especially for people who are in the long-term game, is that your LLC has to renew every year.
Exactly.
You're paying that registration fee annually to the state that you're registered in. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, and that fee is just based to the state. So you may pay.
They'll send it to you.
Yeah.
And let you know that it's believe me, they'll let you know when it's due.
Yeah.
and you just brought up another point. Depending on which state you get an LLC in, so you can get one in Mass, you can get one in Wyoming, because you get one in not. You hear people talk about all different type of things. It's deeper than I know right now. But you don't necessarily, just because you live in Mass doesn't mean you have to have your LLC situated in Mass, which is a whole nother class. But just something, it's out there. So as you begin to read certain things, you'll see mine is a Wyoming LLC, or mine is a Nevada LLC, based off certain laws that those states have. So people think they're somewhat advantageous. Now, like I said, I haven't dug that deep into it, but to your point, that's a possibility.
Yeah, some of that stuff can get a little murky on the
Very
tax
murky.
side of things.
Yeah,
if you're
exactly.
in a New York LLC doing business in Massachusetts, I would imagine.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I
exactly.
imagine you're paying taxes in both states.
Yeah, So I'm like,
Have fun
I'm
with
like,
that.
I'm retreating on that one, y'all. I'm just like, but if you see it, you can. That's why you sort of shift something that people have. I have a Wyoming or I have a Nevada, based off of sometimes the cost is cheaper and all that. But to Luke's point, now we're getting into a tax discussion. A tax professional would really have to help, and then somebody who really is proficient in tax with real estate is what you're looking for as well. Now, I'm not saying they don't do other things, but we've had a person who's been extremely helpful to us to show us how to do some things. And I'm always looking, because you want to keep more of the money that you bring in. And one of the way you do that is by being efficient in your taxes. So.
Absolutely. So another question I have for you that kind of ties back to the LLC and the operating agreement, and also having a good network of partners and people in your team. Have you ever structured an operating agreement, or an LLC for that matter, with partners that you're working on a project with, that's saying, hey, I met my plumber or my electrician or my framer, and we're going to go in on this deal together? Have you brought them in and put them as a part of the equity on a deal yet, or is that something
we have not done that. We've had discussions with actually the guy who just moved. We were talking about doing that. They were going to do the work piece of it. We were bringing the money, and we just never got around to doing it. But when it comes to funding deals, you can get very creative. So I would tell people there are three things: there's cash, credit, and creativity. That's how you get deals. And a lot of times people are freaking out, how am I gonna do this? It's when money is not there, creativity has to be there. And if, like I said, if you find a deal, there are enough people and enough networks that you can tap into, where you can call a guy like me or whoever, Luke, or as you get more advanced and people like that, and say, hey, he has networks of people who may be able to jump in and do some things, because there's private lenders as well, people who mom and dads and aunts and uncles who may have some money sitting in their checking account at 1% that they want to do something with, and so my point being is don't shut out what you can do automatically because I don't have the money physically. Just creativity has to kick in then, and as you become more part of these networks, doors open up for you.
Yeah, you can always find the money, like you're saying. If you have a good deal, you'll find it.
Believe me, you'll find it. Matter of fact, it'll find you in some cases. But I think that's where I hear most people choking at.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't have the money to get started, and it's like, and I was there too. It took me a while. I think our first mentor talked about it. He just kept saying that every week, if you have a deal, you'll find the money. And just one day it was just like, I should have had a V8. It kicked in one day, like, I get it now. Find the deal first. And then once we found the deal, here came the money, because you got, and Luke will tell you this, his job is to put money to work.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
And so we were talking, he was like, I forgot the figure you talked about. I got like $100 million that I need to move. Well, and I think a lot of times people don't understand that when you go to, a guy like Luke needs you just as much as you need him, because his whole job is to get money to out there, because if it's sitting on the sidelines, they're not making money, and if their money ain't moving, you ain't got a job long. And so so go into any lending money situation thinking like that. I'm reading a book now by R. Donahue Peoples. You guys ever heard of R. Donahue Peoples? You haven't heard Donahue?
No.
Oh, you should. You should have heard. Anyway, look his book up. But he is the largest African American developer in I think in the country right now. R. Donahue Peoples, and right now he's building the second largest skyscraper in New York, next to the 9/11 towers.
Wow. I saw an interview with him.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah. And so in his book, it's a book came out like 2007. But what he says in that book is how to make money in any market. And so a lot of the things that I've been talking to people about lately is found in that book. So it's a phenomenal book. But look him up. But one of the things he talks about is having the correct mindset when you're dealing with, Luke is a good guy, I think that, but lender, they need you just as much as you need them, because they have capital that they want to put to work, and they don't want to, and they also don't want to own real estate, but they also know that it's a great investment tool. And so we have to go into our dealings with that type of mindset. So if you find the deal, believe me, there's money out there.
Yeah, and we look at it in the capacity of, when somebody brings something to us, let's say it's a less experienced flipper or somebody. Right. So we'll kind of say two things. Really, when anybody brings a deal that we're interested in looking at, we say, okay, we like the deal. Now, like, you better have experience and money, and if you don't have both, you better have a lot of one of them. So, you say money, but it can be the other way around.
Exactly.
Because if you look at the guy that's scaling, you look at the team that's doing 20 projects a year.
Okay.
they might not have any money because all their money's tied up in real estate. So I
Gotcha.
can look at that and say, okay, you don't have cash, but
But
you
you
have
got
value.
experience.
You have the experience, and
Okay.
you've got things that are worth money.
Right.
So I can lean
Gotcha.
into that and say, okay, I understand why you don't have any money because you have all this.
So the cash flow may not be there, so to speak, but the assets are there.
So do you have enough money to close the deal?
Right.
You do? Great. Or you're going to get it before we close? Okay, we're going to find a way to make that work for you.
Okay.
That part can negate the I don't have money to show you in my account today, Luke. I can't
Gotcha.
show you the 200
Gotcha.
grand you want to
Okay.
see, but like trust me, it'll be there because I'm
Right.
closing on this in 2 days and this in a week or whatever. Like
Gotcha.
we can get the story and understand that part of it. And then the opposite side of that is, hey, I don't have any experience, but I want to do this project. I'll say, okay, well, if I like the deal, I can still do it for you if you have the money.
Right.
So that's where you go and you
Gotcha.
say, okay, you talk to people in your network, you find your aunt who's making 1% on her money in her savings account or whatever. You say, hey, lend me 50 grand. I'm going to pay you whatever you guys agree upon, and you go that route with it. So you
Right.
get the additional capital so you can make yourself attractive to the lender. Say, hey, I've
Gotcha.
got enough money to show you I'm serious. I'm going to put my money up front,
Gotcha.
show you that I'm in business, and I'm willing to take the risk with this money that's either my own or somebody who's important to me.
Right.
And say that I believe in this project, I believe in the deal. Let's do it. And in those circumstances, we'll get involved and we'll say, hey, you should talk to some people in this network. Maybe you come
Right.
to a meetup or something, and then you start to build that network up, and you find out, okay, yeah, I need to have a real estate attorney. I need to have somebody to go to for insurance. They start putting all the pieces and the puzzles together, because like we talked about earlier, you can go to a million classes, you can pay all the money in the world to learn. Never going to actually learn until you go out and do all
it.
that stuff.
Yeah, you got to do something.
You have to have that network.
Yeah, exactly. How many minutes we got, baby? 3? Any closing questions in 3 minutes? Yeah, obviously we can talk. You guys can talk while we're here. Just anyone come on through? All right. Well, Luke, in the last 3 minutes, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me. I think my number was somewhere. My cell phone is an easy way to get me. That's 603-391-9520. My email is Luke.Hanscom, HANSCOM, @fundthatflip.com. You can also find out a ton of stuff about what we offer and what we're about on our website, fundthatflip.com. You can actually apply for a loan and
Online.
put your deal information in right there. And if it's in my part of the country, I'll get my eyes on it at some point, usually within a couple hours of once you've entered it into the website. I'll get a notification and we'll reach out to you and get the ball rolling.
Right.
So,
Instagram too.
yeah, you can find me on the gram too. Yep.
Luke is on the gram.
Yeah, we post some cool stuff on there. Try to keep it light for the most part,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
we get out to some job sites. We showcase some of the projects that we've been involved in, some stuff that we're looking at. A lot of dog memes if you're into that. So whatever whatever's clever, I guess is the saying. So.
Yeah. Well, I got a kick on a couple of your posts on Instagram. I said Luke is on the gram.
One last question. What is your minimum to fund for a project? Do you have a minimum?
Yeah, we do. So question being, what's the minimum loan that we would do? Generally, we'd like to see it at 150 to 200,000 at a bare minimum. But with that said, we're always willing to make a business case for a particular transaction. So if it's somebody who's important to us in our network and somebody saying, hey, Luke, I know this is a small deal. I like it. Here's why. Can you do this one for me? And we'll make a case to make that happen.
Right.
If it's somebody who we've never worked with before and they're saying, oh, yeah, I just have this one deal, like this is the size of project that we're going to do, we might suggest that you find a lender that's better suited for that size transaction.
Right.
But if it's something that we're doing as a favor, we're able to figure that out. Into that 150, 200 range is where we can make something happen. So long as there's enough meat on the bone for us to
Make some money.
make money on the
Exactly.
transaction. So.
All right, I think that's it. Well, I want to give you guys a couple announcements before we go. Our next session will be on October the 18th. Yeah, October 18th. So you guys here, you guys out there in Digitalville, October 18th, Tuesday at, are we doing 7 or 7:30? 7:30, all right. 7:30, I told people 7 o'clock. Y'all make me look bad, I'm just playing. 7:30 on the 18th, our speaker will be Crystal Provinger. So she works in the Western Mass. And so she'll be talking to us about deals and what's going on market-wise, because I always talk about, look everywhere. So they're out in Attleboro. Vanessa's doing stuff in Georgia and so on and so forth. So you just be able to look and invest in different areas. And then also, last announcement is if you're around, the Mass Black Expo is happening this Friday and Saturday. So we'll be plugging into that. But make sure that you, if you're interested in learning more about entrepreneurship and funding and business and all that, you want to plug into that. All right, so this has been Let's Talk Real Estate with your host Dexter B. Jenkins and my man Luke. Luke, appreciate you, sir. Give it up for Luke. And till next time, we'll see you next month. Have a good night. Bye-bye.